start sharing my screen. Thank you all for coming to our September Portland Tableau user group meeting. Let's see here. Let's make sure I can share our screen. Everything look okay, everybody? You see way more than my screen? No.
No, you're good.
Looks great. Cool. So we have our usual format. We have our community spotlight. Today we will be featuring Taylor Cole. He is a visual developer at Nike in the supply chain performance reporting wing, and he will be talking about his heartbreaking and bittersweet love of the Sacramento Kings today, and his dashboard work for that. Following that, we will have Chris Williams, our very own Chris Williams from the Tableau user group leadership team, talk about demographics. That was kind of a spin-off on the conversation that we were asking you guys last time about what content was interesting. Somebody said casinos and like how they plot different locations. And so relating that back, Chris was kind enough to put something together for us with his experience with a precision analytics group. Let's see here. Moving forward, usual housekeeping things, upcoming dates. We have this Thursday's cadence on once a month at 1 p.m. Currently, and for the rest of the year, we'll be doing the third Thursday of the month. In 2023, we will be looking at, I believe, the first Thursday and have most of those dates already booked. So feel free to placeholder those, but we should have official invites coming out typically about a week to 2 weeks in advance. So right on. And our leadership team, for those who haven't been here before, everybody is represented on the call except for Ryan is missing. You can see him on old YouTube videos of us on the Portland user group chat. So, or stay tuned, sure. Let's see here. Oh, we have links for you guys if you aren't following. This is our usual user group link. Feel free to, go back. I will put those in the chat for you. We have been talking about an in-person event. Probably just gonna do it next Thursday after the October event. Meet up in somewhere local. I think we were talking about the White Owl. Does that sound right? Is that where we suggested? So yeah, probably then around 4 o'clock, we'll send something out with the rest of the invitations and things. On our Portland community page, we have job postings there. Feel free to keep tabs on that if something tickles your fancy. And then if anybody has ideas for content, looking to speak, if you think we're doing a crap job and want to tell us, please let us know, or please let us know kindly. Open to things. So thank you all for joining. I will go ahead, and this is our agenda. We will kick it off with Taylor. Taylor Cole, I will stop sharing, and if Taylor would like to take the lead.
Yeah, hey everyone. It's very weird only seeing the six of the hosts, so I'm going to try to use your guys' feedback cues to make sure what I'm saying works. So Danny, I'm holding you to that. So my name is Taylor Cole, and I am going to share my screen and talk to you about my unrequited love of the Sacramento Kings. So kind of first off, I would say anyone who knows me knows, hold on, share my screen. Thank you, Harsha. I had alone on this. All right, let me know when you guys can see my screen. Awesome. Perfect. Yeah, so I'm a huge Sacramento Kings fan. As you can see, that this was my passion project, which kind of let me know two things, but really just one, in that I need more passions in my life. The Kings have been around since 1985 in Sacramento. They've been elsewhere before, and there's this kind of adage that we are basketball hell. In fact, many of our players have called it that. And I do want to call out that kind of the way I view myself as a visualizer is that I'm a very good cover band, or at least I think I'm a very good cover band, in that I like to take ideas and kind of repurpose them. And I say that because, well, I think I don't know, when I first started visualizing, I would always get in my head about not being able to really create something new and innovative. And then as I kind of worked on this more, realized that no one really does that. And the people who did have been dead a long time. And so, and by that, I mean like a lot of these kind of concepts and stuff were created hundreds of years ago. And but another reason why I say this, I actually think that Danny, I stole an idea from you, in that I think you were Danny Steinman, sorry if I mispronounced, you were presenting a dashboard a while back that had, if I'm remembering correctly, and I apologize if it wasn't you, but there were some musicians and you were kind of tracking and you had icons for all the different artists that you were categorizing, which I thought was kind of a unique way to do that. So I incorporated that as part of my dashboard. So anyway, now that I've gotten that out of the way, I'll actually talk about the dashboard and the joy of the Sacramento Kings. So as you can see by this radial chart here, or this, it's not really radial, it's more of a nightingale, that the Kings have been around in Sacramento since '85. And looking at this, purple means good. So kind of just keep that in mind, so that I'm using purple as kind of a proxy for good, and gray, because I'm a fan of the grayscale, as kind of just muted, as not really all that kind of important. But in the context of my nightingale, it is purple means good, and there's not a lot of purple on there. You can see that there's really only an 8-year stretch where the Kings did anything other than being mediocre. So it's, I don't know why I'm still a fan of them, but I think I've just bought into a really bad stock and I'm waiting for it to eventually hit. It's kind of like a weekend in Reno, which is an inside joke for the 6 hosts. There's a Kings announcer who kind of always says that every even terrible teams have a leading scorer. So I kind of wanted to show that, kind of to highlight kind of who is the leaders within the Kings in terms of scoring, passing, rebounding, blocking, and stealing. I don't think stealer is proper English, but I didn't quite know what the correct terminology was. One thing I want to highlight is we've got a lot of Chris Webber, and that other than Chris Webber and Brad Miller, which is right here, no one else on this chart was part of a winning Kings team. Doug Christie as well. Those are the only 3. Everyone else were on some really, really terrible teams. I think there's a few reasons why the Kings have been so terrible. I think one of the big reasons is that they always hire maybe not the best coach, and they tend to fire them really quickly. As you can see from this chart, Rick Adelman has had about twice as many wins as the next closest coach, and that most of these coaches were hired for 4-year contracts and probably fired within 3 years. As you can see by here, by the just the sheer number of games that they got to actually coach. Besides Adelman and St. Jean, no one really coaches for more than 4 or 5 years. Another reason why the Kings have been so terrible is that they've never been a great defensive team, and they've actually been a worse defensive team as of late. And so we were in a 16-year playoff drought, which is officially the longest playoff drought in NBA history. And we will most likely pass the Seattle Mariners for most likely most playoff misses in the last few years. And so what this chart is it is looking at the offensive and defensive ratings of the Kings since 1985, and showing that if it's purple, it means that we've had a positive rating, and that means that we've scored more than we've given up. And we say we because I'm a big contributor to that team. You guys just don't know that. And this chart right here is kind of my take on, if anyone's ever seen the candlestick chart, it's measuring for a particular stock price or stock, the opening and closing as well as the high. I don't really have an opening and closing, so it's more of just kind of the 2 data points because there is no real like it doesn't really work the same way a stock price would. So as you can see, from when we were in the playoffs, when I was 14, we had some pretty great runs offensively, but outside of that span, we've been terrible. And a fun fact, not really displayed on this, but last year we had the second worst defensive rating in NBA history. I think we may, and I'm sorry to say this because I'm in Portland, but actually I'm not all that sorry to say this. I like to talk trash to other teams because I get no joy in basketball. The Blazers were right there with us. I think the Blazers might have been like just right behind us, or may actually have been in front of us. They were relatively close. So yeah, it's been not a fun journey, but I think now that well, I'd like to say there's hope because there's always hope, but maybe I'm just becoming pessimistic in my old age, and that there's probably no hope in this. But I will tell you this right now, if and when the Kings get good again, you will never meet anyone more ambitious than me. So that's it. That was my visualization. And if there's any questions, let me know.
Taylor, I do have a question. How did you decide to go with instead, do you look at stocks often, or how did that bottom visualization come to what inspired?
No, I don't. Honestly, so I think Cynthia can attest to this. When and probably anyone who's ever been on a call with me at Nike, when I first started at Nike, I got very into kind of being able to know every tool in the tool chest, to use a cliche. And one of the ones that I came across was actually the candlestick chart. And I always thought that was a really cool way of showing data, but one where it's hard, I think, to really find use cases for that. And so when I was thinking through what I wanted to show, that was always something that kind of stuck in my mind of, okay, I know the Kings have had terrible defensive ratings, and I've had a terrible net rating as well. And so I thought that would be an interesting way to show the data. And so I think it was just kind of keeping that kind of looking, I guess, to answer your question, I would have been looking for a reason to use that sort of visualization. And I thought that this was the one that worked. So that's why I went for it.
Jordan Heyman has a question and is raising his hand. Jordan, thank you for joining the call.
I like to follow the rules when I ask questions. I was curious about the way that you put your defensive statistic together. Is that just simply like I scored more points than the other team did? Because Portland, based on our defensive efficiency, we are actually last, and we do not want you to take that from us. That's our thing. So don't mess around with it.
So that's why I cushioned it by saying I wasn't 100%.
Okay.
I know we were at the bottom two, and we may have been sharing it with the Blazers.
We're the worst. I just want you to know that now.
Those were your words, not mine. So if there's anyone on the Blazers on this call, that is not the opinion of Taylor Cole. That is the opinion of Jordan Heyman. And Jordan and Heyman and I work together, and I think technically he's my boss right now, so he could fire me for no, he can't fire me.
No hiring and firing powers. Thank you for letting me ask a question.
Thanks for asking it.
Yeah. We have a few more questions coming in. We have a technical question. Is the top right circle a BA spider chart, a bar spider chart? And then a less technical question or a statement saying the Kings can't even win the race to last place. I don't know how you'd like to take the order of those questions, but feel free, Taylor.
I am going to answer the second one first, because even though that wasn't a question, they're right. And that is the most frustrating thing about being a Kings fan. Even though we are like hitting on the historically terrible, we've only had one season where we've ever been in place to have the first overall pick. If I was ever in charge of the Kings, I would just, aim for that number one pick and just be terrible. But that's and actually the one year that we did actually have that, we got the NBA as a lottery. And so even though you have the worst record, doesn't mean you're guaranteed the first pick. And the Kings are the only team to have ever been in position to have the first pick, but then get the last pick available for them as in terms of lottery, which would have been the fourth pick. So for going for the circle chart, to me, I had a really hard time kind of figuring out the name of this. I had been calling this and I think really honestly, it is a variation of the Nightingale chart, though Florence Nightingale was doing maybe important things like documenting cholera, and I was just documenting how shitty my team is. But I would refer to this as like a Nightingale, or I think I'd call this a circular bar chart or radial bar chart. I don't know if I've ever really come across the name of that. I would maybe leave that to, I don't know if Danny or any of the Interworks guys have any thoughts on what they would call it.
Yeah, I've heard
Interworks people. Sorry, I was using guys, gender inclusivity. It's just Danny's on the call, so.
Yeah, I've just heard radial bar chart. That's the only term for it I know. But as long as you get the point across, and if you have a cooler name like spider bar chart, I'm in for it.
Yeah. Be like, and I would never, this is my own personal bias, and I'm going to give my own opinions on things. I don't necessarily think I would ever really use this kind of version of a bar chart in any sort of like work environment. I think number one, I always like to be cognizant of being a good data steward, and this is really, really terribly inefficient because every record, at least the way I discovered how to build it, is duplicated. And so if you have a database or a table that you're hitting with X number of rows, it gets duplicated real quick for not a whole lot of payoff. Because I do think that even though I personally think this is a cool dashboard visualization and it's engaging, it's really hard once you get into it to parse through, as opposed to if you were just looking at a bar chart. That's just my own opinion. I would never want this on any sort of work. Anything that I would produce for work would not have this.
It's hard to visualize area if your X is not on a flat, if it's consistently moving on an arc, it's a little difficult to compare areas.
Yeah, and you can't compare across either, because you can't really see anything on here. It's so drastic, the differences, that you can kind of tell. But if this and this were relatively close and they were across from each other, you would have a really hard time, I think, doing it in an efficient manner and making those call outs.
Yeah, I believe it is I've known it as a Nightingale. So would it be possible to crack any of those open and dive into them for a little bit?
Yeah, let's see. And I just edit on here. I have to download.
Put on your desktop. You have two versions of Tableau. Oh, is that a prep version, or are you going through a server upgrade?
No, I have two versions of Tableau. I just never removed the older version, and so now I just have two. And it's always kind of a fun game of which one's going to open first. Yeah, the hardest part of this was actually, and I know this is going to sound really, really weird because maybe the juice wasn't worth the squeeze, was this section right here, this wins and games coached, in that there was a lot of data prep on this. I had to go through and for each year find the win-loss record, and I had to do it at a game level, because the whole idea of this is I'm trying to show at how long each coach lasted in terms of games. And so this one just was a beast to do. See if it's open. Probably open in this version. Where'd you go?
Your headers are basketball hell since '85.
Yeah,
they're very descriptive and yet witty.
And that was something I was really going for, something that I wouldn't necessarily be able to wouldn't really work in a professional environment. And so that was things I was really trying to get out of, is making sure that the text of the titles, other than the basketball hell since '85, made sense in terms of like what the point was that I was trying to make. I wanted to be very clear and like not just kind of in kind of vagaries of what I was doing, but more of like, all right, there we go. Yeah, so in here, I click in here just to kind of show you how this works. This is all done, and Google is my friend. I did not come up with this solution myself. I stole this from somebody else, which again goes with the whole cover band. But yeah, for each one of these data points, it's duplicated, and then we have these calculations in here for you to do your X and your Y, and so that gets them to kind of be that circular in nature. And then by throwing on, these are window calculations, and so by throwing those on, it kind of builds out kind of this view of the kind of the radial aspect of it. One of the, yeah, and then this one right here, this is just a straight Gantt chart. And because we're all probably nerdy, I can share with you guys a conflict that I was having, which was where to start my axes. Because I decided to not start them at 0, but I feel like some people may disagree with that. But I felt that since I'm not comparing it to any sort of baseline, it wasn't necessary to have it start at 0. And so I started it kind of at a more reasonable place.
Sweet.
Yeah, it would be hard to discern. Okay, do we have any other questions for Taylor before we wrap? Sam agrees with your logic. So,
I do have a question. Where did you get the icon or the like character icons?
Yeah, so there's this website called StatMuse, and kind of their whole thing. And I don't know if anyone's ever on social media or follows kind of like the NBA, they'll randomly have these posted. So I thought it was cool that they, not for every player, but for a lot of players, except for poor Michael Stewart, they would have an icon for them. And so if you were to just go in there, and what I did is go to statmuse.com and said Chris Webber, and there'd be a Chris Webber icon, and you would have Chris Webber's stats. And I should say all the data and the statistics that I got from Basketball Reference. So that was always a great resource for anyone who's interested in basketball stats.
Nice.
awesome. Okay. Well, we'll go ahead and thank you, Taylor, so much for putting this together. This is an amazing dashboard. The link is sent out in the chat, so if anybody wants to take a look, download it, poke around for themselves and see how Taylor did his magic, feel free. Taylor, I'll ask you to stop sharing, and then we can go ahead and let Chris go ahead and share.
Sorry, I missed the link. Give me 1 second. I'm trying to figure out where the link for the stop share went. It disappeared on me here.
I was trying to see if I could stop it. Oh, it's weird. It's on a green bar on your thing.
Yeah.
You should, yeah.
Oh,
I got it.
no,
Sorry.
Danny did something.
For me.
Thank you, Danny. Just commandeering. Brute force works. Awesome. Chris, if you want to go ahead and share your screen. Thank you so much, Chris, for taking the time to go ahead and talk to our group about this. Very excited to hear about demographic data and how that's been able to plot different businesses for you. So thank you.
Yes. So I know we talked about last time, and hopefully you can see me and hear me and okay.
Yep,
so we talked a little bit about casino use cases last time and how that plays into, what you're seeing from a demographic standpoint and how those two intertwine. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to show specific casino data for you, so I can put it onto a dashboard or have dashboards that I can show you due to privacy reasons. But I have a couple of other examples that I'm going to show you, and then I will verbally tie into this. It's kind of ironic that I'm in Reno for a gaming conference on analytics. So it's all this is really fresh in my mind right now. So let's start from the beginning. Let's talk about why demographic mappings are important. So really, demographic analysis is the basis of any kind of planning, whether you're doing customer segmentation, as aforementioned for your casino, trying to understand who your customers are, where they're coming from, what income they may have, those kind of things, whether it be marketing, whether it be real estate planning, which is the example I'm going to get into right there. Both public and private sector benefit tremendously from demographic mapping, because anybody, no matter what level of user or consumer or C-level that you are, you want to look at the map and you want to have like basically just a rule of thumb of any dashboard. When you look at a dashboard, you want to be able to answer 3 or 4 questions within the first 10 or 15 seconds of looking at it. So mapping and doing any sort of location or spatial analysis, having that tied in with any sort of measures, really will accentuate that. It'll draw your attention to what really might be working and what might not be working, and allow you to develop policy or alter policy, depending on what it is that you find. So demographics, and not limited to, but definitely include age, poverty, education level, and income. Which brings me to my particular example. And we'll get into this really quickly as far as why this heat map is here, because I'm going to show you how I did. So I was faced with an interesting use case where I have a client, a former client of mine, Cardenas Markets. It's a Latino grocery store chain in Southern California. And they also have a presence in Las Vegas. What they really wanted to do is try to figure out, where should we put our next stores, or where our current stores and where our next store should be. So one of the objects that we wanted to take a look at was demographics as far as Latina households and how much they were making. And so we took some census data and we did some prep along with the store data that from Cardenas Market, and we prepped it up, put it into a Tableau hyperfile, and brought it in so that we could visually take a look at it. I played around with the type of visualizations here. So what we did, this example here is a census tract heat map. So the intensity is based off of the number of Latina households earning at least 35K. And so the shape files and the density will tell you which areas are strong and which areas are not. And so as I continue, most tracts has a typical bell curve distribution of income levels. So are there wealthier Latinos households where a store would be better? So enter this kind of microchart. So if you highlight a certain area, we'll be able to go ahead and say, for this particular census tract in this area, we'd be able to see, even though we're focusing on, the heat is focusing on $35,000 or more, this is actually the entirety of the breakdown. So what we did beforehand in prepping the data is group all of these into certain buckets so that it would be easier to plot when we're in Tableau. So having said all that, this is how we do the Tableau tooltip. Most of you may have, some of you may already know how to do this. I like showing it just because I don't like to assume anything. And you can obviously toggle, when you insert a sheet in here, you can toggle the width and the height, make it all pretty. You can specify the filters. I just decided to pass everything. This is very high level, and I wanted to just give the executives an idea of what it is that they were looking for. So having said that, we're going to get out of this. We're going to get into this. So you can see my screen. And now we are looking at Latina households. So what I want to point out is these are the stores. So there are 4 stores, 28, 29, 30, and then 27. So these are all located in the metropolitan area of Las Vegas. So you look at some of these areas, this is a high area here. And so we have 612 families in this census tract with greater than 35K. So you look at where these stores are located. So you have these here and you just look at it and you're just like, and I played around with the visualization and the customer really liked the heat map. And I kind of threw that shot in the dark. I don't tend to use heat maps, but sometimes in this particular situation, it actually worked because people are like, okay, so this store is actually addressing this area. This store may address this area, and this store may address this area of deep red and everything. So if you visually look at this and you're just like, okay, so where are my holes, right? What potentially is a problem? Where am I? Why are people down here having to drive so far to a store? So maybe this is probably like maybe 20 miles, 25 miles. Are they going to actually drive 25 miles to this store? Maybe, maybe not. If they had a special reason to do so, they may do that. If you're over here, this may be your closest store. Would you really want to try and traverse, I-15 in rush hour? Or after a long day, you're going to try to trek all the way over here to do that? No. So potentially you may lose the consistent interest of these people down here or up here, even more so. So this is when the secondary analysis comes into play. When you go in there and you're looking at the predominant, the population here, and now you're taking a look at, now this turns into a real estate analysis exercise. Now we're going to say, okay, first, what are the things I'm going to ask? I'm going to ask, okay, so is there any grocery store there now? And that's a yes or no. It turns into kind of like a workflow type of conversation. If there's not a store there, then you're going to ask the question of, okay, so how much does real estate cost here? Is it a high traffic area? Is it something that you're going to have to compete with anybody else to buy real estate there? Is it conducive for having a store there? These are all the questions that we're going to look for. If it's a high traffic area, if you're down here, like an enterprise. So you may have, let me look at this. This is something where this is exactly what we might want to target. We might want to look at this and say, okay, so now we have an income pop, in this area of the census tract, we have exactly what we may be looking for as a target. And we don't have a store here. And you see the density chart here makes it so that this really presents a pretty valid case for going to the next level and understanding how much real estate may cost here. You may take a look at the overall population around there, figure out the traffic patterns around there. And if there's not a store there, then you're obviously like, okay, so maybe the initial question might be why? Why is there not a store there? Did something else happen? Did something fail? This is just really sort of the curtain jerker for the real meat and potatoes of what you could go for, and getting that data ingested and merging it in, or even layering on top of this map, is something that you definitely want to go ahead and consider. So as we propose this heat map, what we ended up doing is highlighting all of these areas in Spring Valley and the Bridgeport, Mountains Edge, Enterprise specifically, and said, we recommend, based off of this data, that you want to take the next step in understanding the real estate, do some real estate analysis, find out some pricing, find out if it's conducive, what kind of strip malls are there, find the income, or not the income, but the revenue of some stores that already exist over there. That might be something that you can actually benefit from. If there is another store, since we're talking about, the pandemic, you may have had stores that might have closed. Is there something that we can, potentially easily sneak into as far as picking up the lease and changing the brands and changing the format of a store? These are all questions that we proposed that our client was very excited about. So I'm going to take a little step back and I'm going to ask the field if anybody has any questions on what I've said to this point.
Yeah, Chris, there's one in the chat. Someone is asking, it almost seems like, or it looks like Sarah is asking, it almost seems like the 35K cutoff is backwards. Wouldn't people who make less be more reliant on public transportation and less able to drive to a grocery store that is far away? Those people also need to eat.
Of course. And so that's when you get that secondary use for a use case coming into play. So when I mean secondary use, is like this is what the client had asked for initially, and then you take a step back and look at, okay, so this is what the data is looking for from this perspective. Now look at it from another perspective. Like, do we really want people, do we want to focus on this part to say, let's put more stores so that people don't have to travel? So if you have this area, Summerlin right here, you have a lot of lower, you have some population here, and you don't want people to have to travel if they're going to be jumping on a public transportation, which isn't necessarily the best. I mean, there's not really a train system in Las Vegas, so they have public, busing and everything, but the public transit is not of the ilk of, say, like a Portland or a Chicago or a DC of some sort. So it's going to be very hard for people who don't have the income to travel all of these places. So even though you have something like this, where you're looking for, you may be targeting maybe a higher income bracket with a store, you're still getting another view of what the lower incomes needs from a market. They may need one closer, like you said, being able to distribute it. The fact that we only have 4 stores in the Las Vegas area and all of them are doing quite well, I didn't include the revenue in this one, begs the reasoning for expansion here. So whether you're targeting a higher income or whether it be a lower income, you want to make sure that you accomplish and cover everything for all incomes. And if that means being able to understand, like this area here, where you may not necessarily have the volume of a lower, higher, income bracket, you may want to take a look at and see what kind of transportation options there are. All of that is public data. All of that data is free and ready to be used. You could just download it from Census and understand what that's available. Some of the other transportation data for the Las Vegas transit system, that's public. That could be also intertwined into your data set, whether it be through a hyper or just trying to hook it up to a live database and throw it in there. And be able to have that secondary analysis. This is just one thing. You could develop a multitude of other dashboards or other worksheets that can tell a more complete story of what you're trying to target. So the client wanted to look at this particular audience, and ironically, the other one that Sarah mentioned did come up from another group of people within that same area. So trying to understand how to market certain areas. Hopefully that answered your question. Kind of.
Thank you for, yes. Thank you for sharing, Chris. Sorry, pulling myself off mute. Sarah says thank you and yes. Also, we had gotten another question. Amisha is asking, what other variables are used in the analysis?
Oh, right now, this is relatively easy and relatively elementary. We kept it very simple because these are the ones, this is the cleanest data that they had. As far as the store information, they were kind of reluctant to really share all the stores information. But if I were to go more into detail on exactly what I would do to make this a more complete picture, I would look at real estate prices in these areas by census tract. I would look at transportation. I would look at traffic. I would look at overall population. And I would look at competitor stores, and I would plot them all along this. I would overlay them on this particular visualization and see what the average drive time is for something for a store. What are people willing to do to drive, whether it be via their own vehicle or whether it be via public transportation, what routes, how long they last. All of that really comes into play. We focus right now specifically on income. There are other things that come into play. So, and a lot of that, honestly, sometimes if it gets really tricky and we have factors that we think may be needed, what I might do is I might do an association analysis on certain tools, on certain dimensions to try to figure out if they actually scientifically have a relationship with what we're trying to get done. So I'll use science, like maybe I'll probably open up Alteryx and put something in there, or write some R code to try to develop something and try to see if there's an actual scientific relationship. And if that's the case, then I would pull that information in if it's available and put it into the hyperfile and display it accordingly. How's that?
That sounds great. Oh,
Yeah.
go ahead, Danny, sorry.
No, yeah, thank you for the answer, both from Amisha and for me. That was interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, so I mentioned to you a little bit about why, this is just an example. This is almost like a placeholder for what I really wanted to talk about, which was, casinos. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how something like this and other demographics go into what I look at from a casino gaming perspective. So one of the main things that I look for are specific, frequent player programs. Every casino wants to understand who their clientele is. And that's what we, formally call as customer segmentation. So I want to know where they live. I want to know how often they come into this casino. When they're here, I want to know where they're playing, what they're playing. And I want to know what they're spending in the hotel. So the reason why all of those pieces of data, I also want to know how old they are, like what their age is. Maybe their income might come into play. All of those pieces of information will help me develop marketing offers to try to get them back into the casino. So personally, I do too much analytics on slots. And that's a bad thing for all the casinos because I actually know how much I'm going to lose. So I'd rather take money from others when I'm playing poker. So you'll find me at the poker table, and I love playing poker. So if someone were to try to get me to get into the casino, I would probably say, given my information, given my background, how much I play poker and what I like to do while I'm staying, they may say, okay, he was here for 3 poker tournaments this past year. He paid a lot at this restaurant. He paid a lot at, with the shows and had some spa treatments. So an offer might be, hey, if you stay here for 3 nights, I'll give you $150 spa treatment and a $40 coupon to use at the hotel, along with complimentary entry at this poker tournament. So why those offers are important is because those offers, based off of what you've done as a user, a frequent player, is what's going to get you back in the casino. As you know, any of these casinos, they have no clocks, they have no windows, they don't care, they don't want you to care about what time it is or how long you've been there. They just want you there because once you're there, you're going to spend money. And you may think you're getting it back, but you may or may not get it back. But they just care about giving you, an opportunity to get back into the casino. Sometimes offers may result in, hey, if you come in for 3 days, we'll give you a $50 slot credit, or we'll give you several free offers at the buffet of du jour, like your buffet at the hotel, buy one, get one type of thing, or buy 2, get 1. Those kind of things don't cost a hotel much of anything, or the casino much of anything. It's really simple. It's something easy and low cost for them to get you back into the hotel and to get you back into the casino. So we track a lot about how far someone drives to get there. So we have your local players, which is usually within 50 miles or more of the casino. And then your anything 50 and greater are what we call out of network, customers and clients. So we track how many of these offers are renewed, what the percentage of them are renewed. Because if certain offers aren't being renewed, then clearly we're not targeting correctly. So we now need to look at those group of frequent players and go back to the drawing board and say, what are they actually playing? What are they actually interested in? So we use analytics and demographics to go ahead, and also a lot of history that's based off of those cards that you get, that you stick in if you're a frequent player. We track all that information. That's my data source, or at least one of them, to go ahead and come up with analytics like this. So when I'm looking at households and I'm looking at, I'm not necessarily looking at race or anything when I'm looking at demographics. I'm looking at income. I'm looking at where they're coming from. I'm looking at what they're playing. I'm looking at how often they're playing a particular game. If they're doing table games, how long are they there? A lot of those timestamps can be captured with that little card. Those sensors and those informations get fed to, you know, the database, and we do stuff with that. So demographics is needed to also, if you're just trying to talk about demographics in a way where you already have a player in a certain area. So like I have maybe a player here in this part of Las Vegas, right? And you're looking at some of the demographics here. You may want to take a stab in the dark and just say, hey, okay, so I have a frequent player here. He or she is wonderful, comes into the casino 3 or 4 times a week. Hell, you know, this looks like an area that we may be able to send just a generic mailing and offer and bring somebody in and have them sign up. Even if you get like 1 or 2 people of a mass mailing, you're winning as a casino, because that doesn't really cost them that much. So I see a couple of questions are popping up. So I want to give some time to answer those.
Oh, and sorry to confuse you, Chris. You're probably getting spammed. I am chatting on the side. So.
Oh, you're good. Yeah. I just think that, you know, it's all good.
I didn't know.
No. Don't be sorry. You're fine. Just being attentive. So.
No, you are. No, apologies.
No, you're good.
Didn't mean to derail.
No, you're fine. That's basically, you know, casino use cases. There are a plethora of them. All the way down to the slot machine, where you take a look at all the levels within a slot machine. I kind of learned some of this. Some of these slot machines have 168 levels of metrics in there. And all of those mean something. And when you take data and information from that, like how long someone has been playing at a particular machine, what's the win rate, what's that customer's win rate, all of that stuff that you can plot on a customer by customer basis or a collective one, leads to a multitude of opportunities and a multitude of visualizations to do that. So, you know, I may have a visualization that highlights for a 90-day period, we had a validation percentage of X, you know, how many of these particular offers got validated. And if it's less than 50% for a particular group of people, in my group, I usually group them by distance right now. How far are they coming from how far are they coming to get to the casino? And you can make a general idea, a general statement that says, okay, so why aren't my buffet, you know, why are my buffet offers being validated? Do people really not, maybe this group of people don't care about the buffet, they're coming from home. It's not really going to mean that much to them because they're probably going to eat before they come. So maybe you stop offering that, right? Maybe you offer more table credit to get them in there. Those are kinds of things that we use demographic analysis to get us in the door to the conversation, to the gateway to something else. Because demographic analysis really starts the cogs going for you to get into the secondary and tertiary reasons why something's happening. And visualizations, if you do that's right, and this is really the first time I've ever used a heat map where everybody's actually liked it, like as far as a client is concerned. And so I'm sitting here just like, I don't know if this works, but let's just take a shot. And they lapped it up like it was, I was feeding them wine. It was fantastic. So anyway, that's pretty much all I have. I mean, anybody have any technical or just functional questions or high level questions or fun stuff like that?
I think I have a philosophical one.
Yes.
So when we're looking at like this visual we have on Latino households in Las Vegas, it seems like there's a lot of opportunity for wrongly assuming correlation equals causation. And then you also talked about going into R and using some more data science stuff, where you also have an opportunity to miss out, like, you know, you'll have that same potential effect. Mm-hmm. What's your process in deciding whether to jump into the more data science route or the more visualization route? And is that just totally dependent on the client or?
No, I mean, this is, when I look at something like this, I look at this as saying, this is the start of the analytics conversation. So you can't necessarily just make a decision off of what you're seeing here. What you want to do is the story that you're trying to tell, you're basically building a thesis for your client. I'm not interjecting any opinion. I'm just using the data that I have to show what is pointing them one direction or the other. So when I would want to add as many factors as possible to get a clearer picture. So this is, I would say, maybe 10% of the way to get to an answer of where you want to build something, like a new grocery store. So this is a starting point. So you look at this, and this is really, you use visualization, spatial analysis to at least say, okay, I can rule out this, I can rule out this. Let me focus on maybe some more aspects within the area. Maybe take a look at the crime in that area. Maybe take a look at transportation to that area. Maybe take a look at the real estate pricing in that area. You've got to add more things, add more dimensions and more objects to that, because when you get those dimensions in there and you start understanding how each of these dimensions may interact with one another, then you have a lot more credibility. I can't go to a CEO and say, I think you should build it here because the colors are, support that. That's not going to fly. You're talking about, several hundred, sometimes $1 million commitment to build something in a certain area. I want the numbers and science to support every reason why I think that's a good area. Because the last thing you want to do is be basically at the 11th hour, sometimes 11:30, and you realize, I didn't account for this. That can't happen. And that's, so when do I use data science? So when I take a look at some of the dimensions that we're talking about or enter the conversation, I will do an analysis, almost not a time series, but basically a relationship, data association analysis to try to figure out if they actually really do relate to one another, given a measure. And so I'll do that, and I'll have that science and have that printout and those numbers. And that will support my next step as far as the next level of an analysis that I have to do to get this right.
Awesome.
Hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah. And then we have two more that we can get through in the next 3 minutes.
Let's go.
Yeah. Keith is asking, what was the most difficult part of putting this together? Was it like the prep, calculated fields?
I love this stuff, so I don't really think about it. A lot of it is making sure that I have the bucketing correct in the prep, because if I'm bucketing correctly on the income, if that's a valid bucket, if that's too much or too small, too large, we took a stab in the dark and it made sense for that particular time. Hell, it may get to a point where we get down the road a little bit and we may want it a little bit more broad. And if that's the case, then I may need to go back and, re-prep the data accordingly. The prep was, I wouldn't say it was hard. It was just more of a, what direction do I want to go and set up the prep properly? Because at the end of the day, that's basically just where, if then else to set the bucket up properly. And that's really not so bad. The micro chart is really not so bad. Just making sure I honestly, it's really when you're not dealing with a bunch of dates, it's trying to make sure that you get the right visualization that will actually begin to tell the story for you. That's a semi-accurate, at least to start the conversation. The visualizations based off of your data is so incredibly important. If you have something else that's not plotted like this, it's not going to have the same, it's not going to resonate the same as, and the conversation will end with a dead end with basically things but no things. As far as, I don't know where to go from here. You don't ever want a visualization to result into a dead end unless you're at the very lowest level of granularity.
Yeah. A similar question from Ben, with respects to time spent, what % was spent just getting the US Census data into the workbook?
That sounds like a question from experience. Sometimes if I get on a roll though, it can be really quick because I've done it enough that I know kind of what I want to get at real quick. But the census data is very standard and tedious. And they tend to change from year to year sometimes, and they're not always the same. So that's the one caveat when you're using census data. If you go from year to year, sometimes they don't play nice and they'll give you the same type of metrics, same kind, like as far as field names. That can be a pain. But it just makes me very, very clear on what it is that I'm trying to get done. So if I go in there with a clear, focused attitude on what has to happen, then yeah, it'll take me some time, but I'll get there. Does that make sense?
Sweet. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, Ben is appreciative of the solidarity there.
Oh, cool. Good deal. Well, I'll share it. Stop sharing. I'm glad I was able to talk to y'all. Thanks for the time. It really means a lot.
Thank you for taking the time before your flight out of Reno for sharing your insights. Thank you, everybody. We're at the top of the hour, so I'll go ahead and stop recording. Once again, check out those links that are in the chat for anything that we've posted. We'll also be posting this recording to YouTube as well. And until next time, we will see you later. All right. Take care, everybody.
Take care.
Bye. Thanks, y'all.